What's up? This is Chess Network with his first video on a basic opening that every player should learn when he's starting to play chess. And this opening, as you all may know, is called the Geico Piano, or it is otherwise known as the Italian game. So it starts off with pawn to e4, and black playing pawn to e5, then white attacking the center with his knight, then black defending with his knight, and the reason you wouldn't play d6 or f6 is because it doesn't develop a piece. And if you play d6, it blocks in your bishop, so instead of developing a piece, it neutralizes a piece. So that's not the best move. And f6 is bad because it makes your king side open, so the bishop can come out to c4 and just watch this diagonal for the rest of the game and prevent you from castling. So that's an important thing to watch out for. Now, in this position, white would play bishop to c4, which targets f7. This is a key weakness in black's position, and black would do the same thing, playing bishop to c5. So he would try to attack white's key weakness, the f2 square. Now there are two ways to continue. You can either continue with c3 and press c3 and pressing forward to d4, or if you're just a very beginning, if you're at the beginning stage, don't try to break or push open. I would recommend you to play d3. This move opens up the diagonal for your bishop, and I would recommend if you are black you would play the same thing. Otherwise, the problem is that if you play knight f6, you get stuck in a pin, and even if you play h6 or something like that, black will play his bishop back, and if you play g5, it's kind of, weakening your king side. So I don't recommend that. In this position, I think that you should also play the pawn up to d6, and the reason for that is that now you can also pin white's knight. But in this position, white would castle. It's the best move in this position. Then white would play knight to f6, and then we can land him in a pin, and you can play h6, bishop is gonna go back, and then we can castle. And then in this position, you can see that black has a bishop to develop, whereas white has a knight. So if you don't want his bishop to pin down your knight, the best move is h3. So it stops the knight from coming here and harassing your king side, and it stops the bishop from coming here. Stops the bishop from coming to h4. And the king also gets a flight square, which helps him to avoid back rank mates. So if you don't know what back rank mates are, it's where the king is stuck on the last rank and it can't go anywhere. So imagine there are no pieces on the board and this is the position, and instead of the white queen there's a black rook and there are no knights or anything. So the king would be trapped. So that's what I mean by back rank mate. So the king now has a flight square on h2. And from this position, black has noticed that he's not going to be able to develop his light squared bishop very well. So I think that he would, well, depends what he wants to do. He could either play the rook over, or he can just trade his bishop. And if he goes for a trade, I think you should take, because it's just wasting a move if you move over and he gets doubled pawns. But that's the best move for black. And then you can play knight to c3, attacking the center. And then an important move for black is king over to h8. And the reason for that is that this is a deadly diagonal. And I'm not gonna play the whole game out for you, but just the basics. Just the basic opening. I'll show you the other variation, which white tries to break open the center. I don't recommend this for you guys, as breaking open the center might be hard for you guys. Well, not hard, but the thing is that breaking open the center, you guys might not know that you should castle, and then, yeah, it's complicated. The moves are e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, pawn to c3, which is going to thrust open, thrust forward with, d4. Now, if your opponent is an intelligent player, he would not play knight f6, because he knows that you can't take this pawn, and what I mean is that after you castle, and he takes your pawn, well, it's complicated. The rook comes over to e1, and there's pins and all that. It's complicated. But if you have a good opponent, he would play d6, then you can get castling done. And then now, after knight f6, now if you play d4, he won't be able to capture the pawn, as his bishop is attacked. So there are two variations. He can back out, or he can take the pawn. In any variation, the bishop is going to end on b6. Now I'll show you the exchange variation. He'll take on d4, we'll take on d4, bishop will go back, and we can play either of two moves. We can play knight to c3, defending the pawn, or you can play rook to e1. I like rook to e1 better, as it gains action on the e file, and we want that. So if black castles, now however what we can do is pin down his knight, and he'll play h6, and then we'll back off and stuff like that. And then it's basically entering the same variation with bishop to e6, but the thing well, sorry, that's a mistake. This is a huge blunder. If bishop to e6 is played, white can just simply push forward with d5, attacking both the knight and the bishop, and one of them will be taken. So we cannot play that. Bishop to d6 won't be played. As white has a large center, it will be hard for black to develop his light square bishop. He'll have to do something like bishop to d7 or something like that. And the third variation is where black retreats the bishop. So it's the same position. Instead, when we play d4, instead of taking, he will move the bishop back. And here we can enter the same line with rook to e1, defending the pawn. And if he castles, then again we can just land him in a pin. But however here, well, it doesn't make really any sense, but it kind of enters the same line, except the tension between the pawns is maintained. So yeah, that's kind of it. So thank you for watching my first video, and I am going to make another video just after this one on another easy opening, on another basic opening, and this opening is used by grandmasters all around the world. So these are